Hello and welcome. Today I'll be going over Palia in my first ever channel review. Um, my name is SholoQ, and I'm going to be going over this new MMO and taking a close look at it in order to determine where it lands as it stands in the world of MMOs that are currently on the market. Palia is only in beta, so I'll be keeping that in mind throughout the video. Here are the categories on my MMO score sheet: user interface, world building, NPC interactions, quests, crafting system, housing, party play, music and SFX, monetization, community, dev responsiveness, patch releases. Each category will be graded from 0 to 5 stars, 0 being terrible, and 5 being excellent. Let's get started. Hi, Future Sholo here, and I just realized I completely forgot to add a character customization category, which is kind of another staple of MMOs, and I don't know why I didn't consider that when I was working on this video, but yeah, I'm gonna do that now and talk about it, but for the rest of the video, you're not gonna see any mention of it, so just keep that in mind. Here for the change appearance, I have a bunch of options. I want to say that Palia has probably one of the best character customizations, like base character customization options I've seen in games. It feels really like just inclusive in general, and it just kind of, I don't know, I guess it like really sits well with me in the sense that there's a lot of different things you can choose from. So, for example, like skin tone is kind of a big deal for me. You know, I'm somewhere in between. So, like, having options like this, so that my character can actually look like me or actually, have some kind of semblance of being like me is just insanely good. Even like the really dark skin tones in the game, I think are really nice, and I like the variety. And I don't really see that a lot in a lot of games. So I gotta say, I'm really impressed with how inclusive this game really feels, at least on its face value. And then you have a bunch of eye colors and stuff, right? You have a bunch of voices to choose from and things like that, which can be really good. The voices overall, I think, are pretty decent. You can also, if you're type B, so if you're male, you can go with like, your different options as well. I'll just kind of briefly show them here on the screen so you guys can see what they look like. And, skin tone and stuff like that is the same. But, if I'm going with my own character's options and I go to the hair options, the types of hairstyles is actually really diverse. But there was one thing I did want to point out, which I thought was like, it just kind of blew my mind when I saw it, is that here on this page, there's a lot of diverse hairstyles. So like, for example, this one here with the hijab, I believe it's called a hijab. The fact that, well, right now my character's bugging out, so you can't see her over here. Normally the character would like move here and you could see like what they're doing or what changes you've made, but for some reason it's kind of buggy. But the fact that you can add a hijab and also change the colors of the hijab as well, like as like a hairstyle, I think is huge. I've never seen that in a game before where, someone could just wear, a hijab or, a piece of clothing. Because the thing is, the whole game is revolved around the idea that humans are like an extinct species, right? And these are hairstyles that people in real life have. These are not like unrealistic. I think they fit really well. It's a shame I can't really show you on the side. Let's see if I close out of this and come back if it'll let me. Let's go with hairstyles. Nope, it's still bugged. That's unfortunate, but yeah, if you look at these different hairstyles and stuff, the fact that, many of them they just look stylish, they look good, they look stylish. If you put a random hairstyle on my head, I'm probably not going to be upset because they're all pretty good, I think. The different types of hair, the textures, the colors and stuff. I wish I could demonstrate now what those colors look like. Unfortunately, like I said, it's kind of bugging. But it would be really, really nice if it, allowed me to show and demonstrate that. So that kind of goes back to the issue of, hey, there's a lot of bugs in this game. Please iron them out. because, you know, being able to preview like hairstyles and stuff like that is kind of a big deal. You also have different face coverings, so there's some new ones from the Masked Doctor set, which I don't have, but they added some really nice facial hair and things like that, which I think is really cool. Ironically, they put face cover is like an icon as a mask, but there's no mask you can wear, which I think is just kind of funny. Um, and then, of course, you know, for skin, you have like different types of makeup, and the makeup is usually pretty stylish. So like I could just change it. You can't really see it right now, but um, yeah, I really do like the character customization options. I think that the fact that like I don't know, maybe overall I would say that the character customization options for hairstyles especially and skin tones I think is exceptionally good. Everything else is kind of lacking. You need a little bit more here and there, sure. The outfits, like the base game outfits, are pretty stylish overall. They're not, you know, they're not terrible, but the paid options are obviously better, if that makes sense. Um, but yeah, I really do like the character customization options in this game, and if I had to rate it, I would probably give it a maybe a 4 out of 5, simply because of how inclusive these hairstyles are. You know, you look at the hairstyles especially, and it's like I know someone with that hairstyle. You know, it's like I've seen someone with that hairstyle. I've had that hairstyle. You know, it's kind of nice. But yeah, I'd give it a 4 out of 5. So first off, we're going to start off with the user interface. I feel like Palia has a very interesting user interface in the sense that you don't actually have a mouse that you really see unless you go into your menu, which is kind of odd. I haven't played a lot of games where your mouse isn't a mouse on the screen, so it's kind of odd, especially for like an MMO. I'm used to playing games like FF14, for example, where you can actually see a physical mouse on the screen when you go to click on things and interact on things. So the fact that that doesn't really happen in this game is a bit odd. But I'm not going to say that it's, you know, necessarily a bad thing. It's just something I had to get used to. When I first started, the tool wheel that you are given in order to switch between different tools as you go along wasn't as good as it is now. I think the updates made to the tool wheel have been very, very good. As far as the icons and things go, something that I wish was a little bit more clear as far as like the game's interface is when you hover over an item. So like, for example, if you're hovering over different bugs that you've captured, I wish that you could have some kind of thing other than like a color indicator just saying, hey, this bug is rare. Hey, this bug is legendary. Hey, this bug is common. Hey, this bug is... Because the thing is, like, you can put color codes all you want, but when you have so many different colors to distinguish between different classes of items, I feel like the word has to be there, like on the top of the description, just to make it easier to remember. I do think that the fact that the camera like zooms in and just kind of allows you to, you know, see like what you're doing a little bit closer when you're bug catching and when you're watering plants and things like that, I think that that is a really good thing. The only thing I think, well, there's a few things I would like to see changed, or at least stuff that I've seen in other games that's kind of missing, is the ability to hide your interface. Now, you're probably wondering, who cares? Why do you want to hide your interface? Well, here's the thing. If you have camera mode, now I haven't used camera mode that much, but camera mode is not the same as removing an interface from a regular screen. The fact that I can't just take a screenshot of the game in the way that I want in order, like just bare bones, just take a screenshot, makes it really hard to make thumbnails and stuff like that. And if you want your game to grow and you want, you know, content creators to talk about your game, I think that that part of the interface is kind of crucial. The camera, like the default camera on your character, is always slightly above your character but behind your character, and it's kind of an awkward spot because you can only zoom out so far, you can only zoom in so far. So the fact that you don't have full range of zoom and adjustability with that, I think is not as it's not as intuitive as it should be. and it's not as friendly as far as the user interface goes. When looking at items in your inventory, I feel like some of the items and the way that they look, it's hard to kind of tell what some of these things are. Like they'll make things that are like super tiny and hard to see. So it's kind of not ideal if I have to like lean into the screen to see, you know, what a tiny like shiny pebble is, or a small shiny pebble is, or whatever, like on the screen. I think that some of these icons need to be adjusted for better readability so that I don't have to hover over every single item to see what it is. I need to be able to look at the item and be like, okay, that's what it is. This is, you know, what I'm dealing with or whatever, which is fine. I also think that items that cannot be sold, the fact that there's no real visible difference or way to distinguish between items you can sell and items you cannot sell, um like by default, like there's no like check mark or anything or checkbox within the menu where you can just like you know, hide items you cannot sell or hide items that um are of X status. So like let's say you have an uncommon item. You know, if you want to search only by uncommon items, you don't have that option. So it's like the search function is not very good when it comes to the user interface. When you have lots and lots of items in your inventory, especially if you're trying to look for like a furniture item, the fact that you can't just type in the name of the item to search for it is a little bit problematic in my opinion. So I think the user interface, if I had to give it a score, I'd say it's maybe a uh, if I had to give the user interface a score, I would probably give it a 2. I think that it needs a lot of work. It needs a little bit more clarity when it comes to items. And I think that uh, there's certain things to it that really need improvement, especially when it comes to like when you're first opening up the game and you're just starting, having a big open space but no like empty squares to indicate, hey, you know, you could put items here is kind of a problem. So I would give the user interface for Palia beta in its current state, which is patch 0.175, a 2. It needs a lot of work. All right, let's talk about world building. So world building would include things like character development, things that, you know, kind of explain the world around you, storytelling. You know, is the world believable? When I step into the world of Palia, is it believable as a possible place to be as far as the script goes? So for example, you know, in this game you are a human who pops up randomly and you're trying to find out what happened to the humans of the past and blah 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 blah. The idea behind it, the premise of the game, and some of the interesting aspects in general, like everyone in the game plays a role, so I feel like the world building itself is pretty cohesive. The fact that the characters are actually wandering around the world and walking around and, you know, being in places where you would expect them to be based on their habits, based on their lore, based on stuff like that. I think the world building in Palia is actually very, very good and has a very good um foundation to build upon. If I had to give world building in Palia a score, I would give it a 5 out of 5. I think that there is plenty of meat to go on here. The bare bones of the game, the structure of the storytelling and the world building is there, and I think that it has great potential to grow and move on going forward and expand upon. So 5 out of 5 for world building. Next, I'm going to talk about NPC interactions. NPC interactions in this game, the reason why I separated this one out here is because I think it's important to kind of keep in mind how you feel about NPCs in the game when it comes to things like personality, likability, relatability, and things like that. And I think that that's kind of why people get into the game in the first place. You know, some of the first things you see when a game is newly marketed is you start to see NPCs walking around. It makes you wonder, oh, who is that? What are they doing? And things like that. So I think the interactions are interesting. I think the fact that this game has a romancing system or a system where you can romance characters, I think is kind of interesting. I've never really played a game that had that kind of thing, but I have seen others play other games that are like that. So to include that in an MMO and include that in a game where it's supposed to be kind of like a cozy farming sim in a way, I think is kind of interesting, is a very interesting choice. When it comes to NPC interactions, I would say I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5. The reason why is because sometimes NPCs will repeat things or say things that don't make sense. So like for example, whenever I'm talking to Hassan, a lot of times Tao, you know, the plume hound will be right next to him and he'll say, have you seen my plume hound, or have you seen Tao or whatever? And I'm just like, dude, he's standing right next to you. So things like that need to be fixed. So I think that, you know, it's kind of weird. And also there's a lot of weird bugs when it comes to NPC interactions, where sometimes you'll talk to an NPC, you'll be doing whatever, and then if you stay in that menu for too long, all of a sudden they're like, okay, I'm out of here, but you're still able to buy from their store. It makes no sense. I do think that NPC interactions could be better, so I'll give it a 4 out of 5. You can't get my 5 out of 5 just yet. It needs a little bit of bug fixing, but I do think that the character development, as you become more and more familiar with the NPCs, is relatively good compared to other games I've played, just in general. So 4 out of 5 for NPC interactions. Next, I'm going to go over the quests. The quests, I would say, are pretty chill for the most part. The more challenging quests are finding, not items, but like both items and things you can craft and things you can obtain, you know, via XYZ, you know, strategies, or even just buy off of like, you know, Zeki's store, for example. I think, which is like the general store in the game. I think that the overall quests are pretty good. There are some quests out there that I do feel are somewhat unfair. So, for example, when you're looking for Ember Seeker's medallions, after you complete the Fire Temple stuff, looking for those medallions throughout the world, they're hidden in the most like obscure places you can even think of, to the point where even I have to look up a guide on where to find these things. And and I mean, I'm not trying to act like I never look up guides. Obviously I do. I mean, I play games, right? But I shouldn't have to do that for something that is like so crucial in the game. Like if it's a main quest or like a main story quest item, you know, or task I need to do, completing that task should not be a frustrating experience. And even in the new Wind Temple, I've had a little bit of frustration with these quests. And so in some ways, I feel like some of the quests can be hit or miss. The vast majority of the quests are fine, but there's like a few quests here and there that I think are just genuinely, you know, kind of feel like they set you up to fail, to be honest. But what I will say is that there doesn't seem to be any timed quests. And when I say timed quests, I mean like time sensitive quests, in the sense that you're not racing against a clock to complete any of them, which I can appreciate, because this is supposed to be a chill, relaxed, cozy game. It's supposed to be the kind of game where you can leave, you know, your PC for like, you know, 5-10 minutes and you're not going to come back to a dead character. That doesn't exist in this game. There's no combat in this game. So as far as the quest goes, I would say I'd give it a 3 out of 5. Not too shabby, but not the best I've seen either, and it can be a little frustrating at times. So I think 3 out of 5 is appropriate for the quests. Next, I'm going to go over the crafting system. So the crafting system consists a lot of just using crafting stations to complete stuff and to make items and whatever, which is fine. But at the same time, I think that you can't really have a crafting system that is super inconsistent. So for example, if I'm crafting an item, like let's say I'm trying to make like iron ore or something like that, and I'm using like the standard furnace or whatever, or smelters or whatever it is in the game. That's really like, set and forget kind of stuff where you just submit the item and you forget. I would say it's kind of similar to like V Rising, where you throw like an item to be kind of, dealt with by a machine by itself, and you just like leave it and forget it and come back and it's done, which is fine. But then you have other parts of this crafting system in Palia where you have a very interesting in-depth thing to do. So for example, cooking. The cooking crafting system is excellent. I love it. However, I cannot give it a high score because it is extremely buggy when it comes to certain things. So for example, you might be chopping stuff and it's not quite chopping where it needs to chop. Food just burn on you because you started let's say you started a recipe, you started cooking, but now you're stuck. And, the first time it happens to you, you don't realize that you're stuck until you realize you're stuck, if that makes sense. So, having to use the /unstuck option every time I make I cook an item is kind of ridiculous. I think the system itself, the way it's set up, makes sense, but I do also think that some of these recipes are so advanced and really taxing when it comes to resources and time, as far as like gathering all the materials, that I kind of question whether it's a little bit too much. So overall, crafting system, I think is kind of inconsistent when it comes to player interactions with the system itself. So furniture crafting, for example, you just have the items, boom, 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 it's done. Let's say you need to make fabric, you throw the cotton in the thing, it makes it for you, and it comes back. I think some of these items that you put into the into things like smelters and stuff like that, I feel like it's a little too slow. I think the timing or the amount of time it takes for these items to be completed is way too long. Like, I think part of the reason why I feel like it's too long is because the value of certain items and things have gotten a lot less over time. Like, they've brought down like the amount of money you'll get from selling certain types of items. So even if you go out in the world and you collect all the ores and materials and stuff like that, the fact that you can't use it for, or use everything for like several hours, it feels like, until it's done, is kind of insane, depending on some of the timing. I think that certain machines need to have their times adjusted as far as craft time. So when I'm going over the crafting system, if I had to give it a score, I would give it a 3 out of 5. I think it's hit and miss here and there, but I see what they're trying to do with the cooking, and I think that if they make other means of crafting just as interesting with like mini games and stuff like that, then it might not be that bad. I think it could actually be a lot more fun. So I see potential here, but I wouldn't say it's, the best crafting system I've seen, especially when you have as many bugs as you do with cooking. So 3 out of 5 for me. The next part I'm going to go over is housing. I think housing is actually really, really good in this game. The reason why is because you're given a house. Like, you're basically, like, part of the story is that you're given a house. You're guaranteed to have a plot of land to call home. Other MMOs are not like this. So for example, like in PSO2, you have to, I believe, purchase a room or whatever for like yourself or your guild, and you only have like this tiny little room that you can decorate and put things in. Hell, I barely even mess with that because of how small the area is. It just feels like it's not even worth it, right? FF14 has another problem with this too, where for some players, getting a house is out of reach monetarily. So like, for example, if let's say you have only let's say you have 2 million gold on you and you need like 2.8 million to get a house, you're already priced out of the market, right? So that's an issue. Whereas with Palia, it's housing first, everything else after, which I think is actually really smart, considering the fact that it gives you a reason to stick around. You know, you're not just like working toward a goal that you're not sure how long it's going to take you to get to, and oh, let me enter this lottery system to get a house or to get this or that, or you know. And I'm not talking, and I know there's going to be someone in the comments section who's like, oh, but you can get an apartment in FF and yeah, but you still have to pay for it. That's the thing. With Palia, you don't have to worry about that. That's not a problem. So when it comes to housing, just on its face, I think it's already ahead of a lot of MMOs, especially because this is a free-to-play MMO. Getting your own housing instance to have your own home and all that, and the game is free to play, is something that I think other games should have done better. And, you know, so far so good with Palia. Now, I'm not going to talk about just housing as far as availability, but also things like decoration and furniture and stuff like that. So it's still kind of early when it comes to how long it's been out. It's only been out, the beta's only been out since like August, right? But we have a lot of furniture items that we can mess with. We already have something that allows us to change the color of furniture items. I've been looking through and, you know, taking a look, and honestly, I'm pretty impressed with the variety of furniture and items like that. So when it comes to housing and how you can decorate stuff, also the fact that you have a grid system every time you're going to place something is so helpful. That's something that FF14 doesn't do. That's something that I don't even think PSO2 does. I could be misspeaking. It's been a while since I picked up that game. But it's just one of those things where you think like it's kind of like a no-brainer, like duh. But a lot of games don't have that. So having that, you know, ability to line things up perfectly, like, oh, here's the grid system, it's directly parallel to this, it looks great. And then also knowing whether or not you can place stuff based on the color that outlines the item, I think is just fine. Being able to place things is great. Also, adjusting where your house is on the plot. The fact that you can move your entire home left, right, center, up, down, wherever, as long as it fits, is amazing. And I think that because of this, I would give Palia, well, bugs aside, because there have been bugs in the past with this issue, but lately I've been having no issues with, designing my home and, reorganizing stuff like that. If I had to give housing a rating in this game, I would give it a 5 out of 5. Next, let's talk about party play. So there are some incentives to play with other players or play around other players, because you do get buffs while fishing. If you're fishing together, if you're mining together, you get like, achievements and stuff like that, and just a couple of examples. The game wants you to play with other people, but it doesn't force you to play with other people, because there's no real, it's not like you're going through dungeons with someone and, completing a dungeon together. So party play, in a way, I think isn't as significant as it needs to be in order for this game to be an MMO experience. Because it doesn't make sense for the game to be multiplayer if you can play everything, without other people's help or input, essentially, for the most part. I've spent most of this game playing solitarily, not because I want to avoid people, but because I am still, learning a lot of cool things with the game. I've only been playing for about a month now, but I've spent several hours to the point where I feel like I can even make a review on this game, to be honest with you. Party play, if I had to give it a score, because the nice thing about playing a party is you can see other people on the map and stuff like that, and you can, show people like where you're pinging and, hey, go over here, or hey, we're going that way. Like that's great, right? That's great and all, but it doesn't feel necessary at all. And this is supposed to be an MMO, so unfortunately I cannot give it a high score. If I had to say party play, when it comes to Palia, I would give it a 1 out of 5. I don't think it's necessary at all. You can literally play the whole game without adding a single friend. You can play the whole game without, doing this or that. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but the fact that I haven't really felt compelled to play with other people when I've been playing the game for like a month is kind of concerning when this is supposed to be an MMO. So I'd say 1 out of 5. Music and SFX. The reason why I put music and sound effects together in the same category is because I think they're equally important. When you're creating a game that's supposed to be cozy, like Palia, where you're just chilling and, you know, whatever, you don't want music that's too intense or too, you know, too drastically different from zone to zone, to throw people off or make them feel like, oh, I've just entered a new world, because it's supposed to be the world of Palia. It's not supposed to be, you know, it's not supposed to be like you're literally entering other worlds. Like other games like FF14 do this, where they can go and enter other worlds, but that's part of the story. With Palia, that's not the case, so I'm not going to compare it in that way. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up. But what I will say is that the music for me is kind of negligible in this game. And it's not that it's bad. It's not that it, you know, doesn't really suit me or anything like that. I just don't notice it half the time. It doesn't feel important. But what I will say is that the sound effects are. It really gives you a sense of being in nature when you go into Bahari Bay and all you hear is birds chirping and, you know, various critters going here and there, and you hear like some bugs in the distance, you hear, you know, things happening. You hear the life of the forest, you hear the life of the area coming through those sound effects, and I think that that is actually pretty good. And also when you're doing things like crafting or you know, gathering items or whatever, the sound effects when you pick something up or when you break a rock or whatever, it's consistent with what you would expect there to be, if not a little bit better. So with Palia, I would say that the SFX, if anything, is really the saving grace in this category for the game. But what I will say is that for the overall score, I would give Palia a 3 out of 5. If it wasn't for the sound effects, I'd probably give it a 2 out of 5, but I think that the fact that the sound effects add a layer of depth to the game where you feel like, okay, I'm immersed in nature, I am, you know, near the ocean, like you feel like you can feel the area you're in. Like if you close your eyes and you listen to what's happening with the SFX, you can kind of tell where you are in the game, and I think that that's kind of important. So I think 3 out of 5 is fair. Monetization. So monetization is the next category here that I'd like to go over. The issue with monetization is that every game kind of does it different. So for example, just for the sake of comparison's sake, I'm not going to compare this game to FF14 when it comes to the monetization category. When it comes to like the original like subscriber stuff, the fact that the game is free to play itself makes it more akin to something like PSO2 in my opinion. So here's how I'm going to go over it, and I'll try to explain this as well as I can. So the way that I see Palia's monetization system kind of reminds me of League of Legends. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Oh my god, not this, not a MOBA. You know, this is about MMOs. What are you doing bringing up a MOBA's monetization? Okay, look. Okay. The idea is that your monetization, at least in this game, Palia, is supposed to be pretty much all cosmetic, right? All cosmetic. So if you go into the premium store, you look around and all you see are outfits and things like that, which is fine. Kind of like how with League of Legends, you can play the game to its, you could be like the highest rated player of, you know, whatever lane on whatever champion in the game and not spend a dime. That's something that I think is really important, because when you have free to play games, you don't want a system that is a pay to play element. And the fact that, you know, there's no pay to play element there, you know, for Palia at least, I think is a really positive thing. But what I will say is that when you have a free to enter or like a free to play game, the expectation for the average user or the person who maybe doesn't spend money all the time, but maybe plays regularly, the ones who are supposed to build up your base community, they are important more than ever. Because even if you go after whales, right? So people who have lots of money to spend, who buy all the cosmetics and, you know, good for them, great. But what is the point of helping those, of focusing on whales when your game is so new? That's a problem. Why? Because this is an MMO. League of Legends is not an MMO. You don't have to make friends in League to play League. You literally, like, you literally, it's a team game, but you can, you know, play it as like a solitary player who just plays alongside other people. Whereas with Palia, it's supposed to be an MMO, massively multiplayer game. That's what the MM stands for. So when you don't cater to the people who are massively part of your multiplayer base, and you only have, you know, items that are very expensive. I mean, hell, look at these prices. I mean, with some of the prices you spend here in Palia, I could have bought like 2 skins in League of Legends, right? So it's kind of insane when you think about it, because the game is so new. I think that the cost of the items, as far as the outfits and stuff like that, is way too high, especially because this game is only in beta. The idea that you would have, you know, this kind of monetization at this price point so early, I think even hinders them. I seriously thought about buying an outfit or two. I was like, you know what? I kind of like this game. I think I can see myself playing this game for a while. And then I go to the premium store and realize everything is out of my price range and there's nothing I can just really buy for like $5. That's a problem. So as far as monetization goes, it does feel a little bit predatory in the sense that it's a little too high and there's no like there's no in between options. It's like if you have a set of gear that's, you know, some purchased cosmetic, all of a sudden it's like, wow, that person must be rolling, you know, they're rolling in dough, because that's very expensive. It's kind of like back in the day with League of Legends when people first started playing the game, and when someone had a skin, it was a big deal. You know, like people would be like, oh, wow, that person has a skin. They must really know what they're doing, you know? And then that's why nowadays you see people typing things like, oh, return your skin whenever that person sucks and they have a skin. So in a way, it's kind of funny how I'm kind of comparing these two monetization things, but it's because at least with League, you have, you know, you have high priced items. So the brand new stuff, you have the legendary skins, you know, you have big bundles of stuff whenever a new skin line comes out. That's high priced items, but the skins go on sale often enough that eventually, if you're patient, the skin you want will go on sale. Whereas with Palia, Palia's still in beta. It just started. You've only just released the game, or started, you know, this whole journey with the game in beta since what, August? And you're starting off the price point at like, I mean, I'm sorry, but I can't justify a purchase of a skin for like $20 or whatever when I don't even know if the game's going to exist in another 5 years. I mean, let's be real. You haven't even, you know, fully released. I mean, I could go on and on about why I feel like this is predatory and unfair. So what I will say is that the monetization, I would actually give a 1 out of 5. I wouldn't give it a 0, because at least the items they're offering are appealing and stylish and very much wanted. And, you know, someone might be like, you know, saying something like, oh, well, Sholo, just because you're poor doesn't mean that, you know, it's bad. It's like, I'm sorry, but if your average player who maybe casually plays the game and maybe they want to buy a skin or a new outfit every once in a while can't even do that, you're alienating a huge population of people who now have no reason to go back to spend money on your game. You're going to have an issue where you have all these players who just slowly die off because they're not so invested in the game. They don't, that you didn't put money on the table. So yeah, I think I'm going to give monetization 1 out of 5. I think it's actually kind of poor. And another thing too, I think the nail in the coffin for me, which made it a 1 out of 5, is the pets. The pets are only available if you purchase something in the store. The pets should not be an accessory to purchase. The pets should be a purchase, in my opinion. If I had to spend $5 to get a cute little pet following me around, I could do that. I think I can part with $5. But if I have to spend $30 to get 3 pets, or like, you know, $10 or whatever, now you're asking for a higher commitment of the player's you know, purchasing power. So I think that, you know, I think that the fact that the only pets in the game currently, which everyone was super excited about, are locked behind a somewhat high paywall, is ridiculous. So I'm going to put that as a 1 out of 5. I mean, I know I ramble a lot when I talk about these things, but I think it's important to kind of nail that in. Like, hey, this is a little bit out of my price range. Like, I don't feel comfortable committing this much money to your game when it's only in beta and it's a free to play game. Like, what the fuck, right? Anyway, next I'm going to go to community. I think the community of Palia is overall very good. The people who play are obviously looking for like a comfy, cozy atmosphere. A lot of times when, for example, like the flow trees, when the flow trees spawn, people will call them out and be like, hey, there's a flow tree near this place and that thing. And this kind of goes back to user interface a little bit, and why I didn't, rank the user interface very high. Is that there's no way to like pinpoint coordinates, type it in the chat, and share that coordinate with other people. So that kind of goes back into that. And the reason why I'm bringing this up during community, right, is because who are you pinging for? Other people, right? So if you're trying to build a community, you're trying to make a consistent player base that meets each other, talks to each other, have great memories together and stuff like that. I think that so far the Palia community overall, like the player base, has been really positive just overall as an experience. You don't get a lot of like it's hard to like troll people in the game. You don't really have a lot of elements where you have no incentive to screw over other people, and when you do, it just makes you a dick. You don't have any real gain from doing that. So the fact that people are encouraged naturally to work together, I think, is really positive. And the fact that, if you ask questions in chat, there's always that one person who's willing to help. I like the fact that you have a system where you can request an item and someone can fulfill the order for you who happens to be online at that time. I mean, these kinds of things, I think, build a great community, and I see the seeds of a really, really nice community overall. So when it comes to community, I think that we are at a 5 out of 5. I don't see a lot of toxicity, hardly at all, and people seem to be really friendly. They wave at each other, say hello, even if they just happen to run into each other. People will hit a rock one time, let other people hit the rock too, so they all get credit for killing the rock or breaking the rock and getting all the materials. I mean, that's just, it's brilliant. The shared loot is brilliant. So community, 5 out of 5. Next, I'm going to go over dev responsiveness. So there have been like some issues with interface issues and stuff like that, and there's been feedback. So I'm going to use one example in particular to kind of go over my perception of the dev's responsiveness to issues. So I like that whenever there's like patch notes, they kind of list different bugs and stuff that they're currently are known, or things that they're currently working on or that they're aware of. I think that is really good, especially because these things get to be on the list so quickly. So I think that's definitely a good start. I also think that the dev's response to people talking about the wheel for choosing your tools, the fact that they updated that wheel in the way that they did, in ways that kind of does make sense, I think is a good response to player feedback and stuff like that. I'm sure there's others feedback and things that need to be addressed, but that was probably like the biggest thing in my mind when I think about like dev responsiveness, because you want them to implement things that are not just bug fixes, but also quality of life changes. So since I've been playing the game, even just these few weeks, I've seen a lot of quality of life improvements to the game. So dev responsiveness, I would give them maybe a 4 out of 5 for now, because this game is still in beta. But that answer might change as time goes on, but I think it's a little too soon for me to necessarily throw it, into the abyss, if anything, because we haven't reached a point of no return or anything weird like that. So I think this category needs a little bit more time to iron itself out, but I would give it a 4 out of 5. Patch releases. Okay, so patch releases is the last category I'm going to be going over. I think that the patch releases have been very hit or miss. And when I say hit or miss, I mean miss or miss, because you have some, I don't know, I feel like the actual patches that go out are happening so frequently that there's not enough time being used to bug test a lot of this stuff. You have game-breaking bugs with pretty much every patch that comes out. And when I say game-breaking, I don't mean like, oh, it's just a minor annoyance. I mean, I literally cannot perform this task and complete this thing I want to do in-game that I'm supposed to be able to do because of a bug. So I think the patch releases are very much plagued with bugs and riddled with issues, technically. But what I will say is that the saving grace of the patch releases has definitely been furniture items and the inclusion of new outfits and things like that that they add. So I think the frequency is too high. This kind of reminds me of when, like, I forgot what season it was, but like early in like several years ago when I was playing League of Legends, there used to be a new champion like every like 2 or 3 weeks or something like that, and that was like way too much. I feel like Palia is kind of dealing with the same problem, and I think that they need to slow down, release less patches, and release patches that are more heavily tested, because right now these patches are completely disruptive to some of the parts of the game. So for example, if I'm like the Wind Temple thing that we just got in the latest patch, right? Going through the air and stuff like that is really cool. It's a really cool area, but I have had issues with climbing. I have had issues with, you know, just being able to interact with items and do stuff like that. Like the previous patch before this current patch we're in, there was a bug where you couldn't even talk to NPCs without walking away and then walking back to them to interact with them. Bugs like that should not be making it to live servers. That is insane. That is like next level, like I don't know. I feel like they're going way too fast. I think they need to slow down. Like, I understand you're trying to grow your game, you're trying to focus here or there, but I really think they should spend more time bug fixing and less time you know, making new items and stuff like that. Because yes, the new items are important. Yes, the nature of the game being a cozy, you know, home building, base building kind of game where you kind of do your own thing. I understand that that is the premise of your game and that you're trying to appeal to people who, you know, maybe like games like Stardew Valley or trying to think what else. But you really need to slow down, guys. Like the patches are coming out so fast. The patch notes themselves are not as detailed as they should be. There's sometimes I'm reading through the patch and I'm wondering like where, like, you said that there's a change to this, but what was the change? You know, like they'll say something like, I'll use an example. So they might say something like, oh, improvements have been made to the blah blah blah, but they won't tell you what those improvements are. They won't explain the logic behind the improvements. And you know, some people might say, oh, you know, you're asking too much from, you know, game devs to explain these things, but I completely wholeheartedly disagree. I mean, I've played other games where the devs will straight up explain, hey, this is the patch, these are the things we implemented in the patch, this is why we made these changes, here's what we got from player feedback, this is how we, you know. So I feel like the patch releases, I'm gonna include patch notes in this category just because it's, well, it's the patch themselves. I think that they're not detailed enough with the patch releases, and I think that the patches come out way too fast, way too soon, and I think they need to slow down, fix out a lot of these bugs, and even delay a patch if they have to. You're in beta. This is your time to shine. Slow down, fix the bugs, improve a lot of these things. Now, I understand bugs take time, right? I'm not a game dev. I'm not some programmer who knows how these things work, right? I'm not going to pretend I know how these things work. But what I will say is that it's better to come out with a consistent quality when you come out with patches than it is to have new patches with new stuff that people want to experience. They get in game and, oh, now I'm crashing. Oh, now I can't even, you know, I can't even get from one zone to another because I'm lagging. You know, the server instability, stuff like that. It's just, I'm going to include server stability in the patch releases category, in the sense that if your server stability is bad every time a patch releases, that is a negative experience for the player. So, when it comes to patch releases, I would give it a 2 out of 5. Yes, you have great items. Yes, you have great, quality of life changes. Yes, you have, great new thing here, blah, 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 blah. Sure. But if it's implemented poorly, that reflects on not just the game, but the game's direction. This is Palia beta. This isn't Palia full release. This isn't like early access Palia. This is beta Palia. I've seen games in early access have a better control on their bugs than games like Palia that seem to throw out all these things like, hey, check out these shiny new items and da da da. Like, I understand that I understand that releases are important, but you don't want to create fatigue when it comes to player experience in the sense that, oh, now I missed out on this, and oh, there was a patch for that, and crap, but now I'm so far behind I can't even catch up, and then before you know it, those same players say, you know what, I'm done, I didn't spend any money on this game anyway, I'm not coming back, don't worry about it. That's a problem. So with the patch releases, definitely going to give that a 2 out of 5. Now, overall, my conclusions, I'm going to go over my conclusions for this game, and I'm going to just kind of speak, anything that I didn't really include in my categories and my skill system and stuff like that. I'm just going to talk about just in general. So here are my conclusions of the game. I think that Palia has a lot of potential. There is an appetite for this kind of game. It's weird that it's an MMO, which makes it also the shiny new toy that people can, go and try out and look at. The fact that the game is free to play is nice because the barrier to entry is extremely low. So it's very... I think this game has the potential to fill a void in a genre where, so like the simulation, like farming simulation genre and, crafting and stuff like that, that genre of games is not typically in an MMO format. So I think that this game has the chance to fill a void within that community who have maybe wanted to go the MMO route, but they don't want to play games like FF14 or World of Warcraft or PSO2 and things like that. Why? Because they want to be cozy. They want to be chill. I do feel like that Palia is probably one of the least stressful games I've played ever. I've played games like Farm Together, which are super chill, another farming simulator kind of game. I wouldn't consider it an MMO, but it has a lot of similar elements to Farm Together. And I think that this game has the potential, like I said, to fill that void. I would also say that I feel like the game is just genuinely fun. The character interactions, the romancing system is really interesting, adds a twist, adds a little bit of, extra character depth and stuff like that to the game, which I think is very, very much appreciated. So overall, if someone asked me if I would recommend playing Palia, I would say yes, I would. If you like games that are, simulation games or games that have maybe some focus on like farming simulation, or maybe you like to romance characters, or maybe you're just looking for something where you could just sit down, chill, relax, and de-stress for several hours, or even just a few minutes, Palia is probably the game for you. So as it currently stands, I would recommend Palia for people to try out. I don't think there's any harm in doing that. In the sense that, well, there's no loss. The only thing you lose as a result of playing Palia or starting off playing Palia is your time. So, do I think it's worth the time? Yeah, I do. And I think that this game has some potential. So, yeah, that's where I'm going to be with my analysis of this whole game. And I hope that this review is very helpful to you guys, because I know that I had a few people ask me to do like a review on the game. So I said, you know what, let me just throw a review in here real quick. Okay, it wasn't quick. I've probably been speaking for like, what, 40 minutes? Maybe? I don't know. I'll have to probably cut some pieces out. But yeah, I think that the game has a lot of potential. I would recommend it for people to try out. I do still think that there's a lot of areas for growth, but remember this game is in beta. So don't expect this game to have the same level of finesse or the same level of cleanliness when it comes to patch releases and things like that as other games. And I know I was really harsh on this game when it comes to patch releases, but it's because I want it to succeed. You know, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, oh, this game is so great, and because I love this game, the bugs aren't that bad. Like, I'm not going to put on rose-colored glasses to justify the level of bug fixing that needs to be done in this game. But if you are okay with that, if you're okay with trying out a game that maybe is a little buggy, maybe is a little wonky, needs some quality of life adjustments and changes, and you're patient and want to go for the ride, yeah, try out Palia. Maybe that's the game for you. Who knows? Maybe you've never played an MMO before and you're kind of curious about what the hype is about and you want to try it. Go ahead. Go for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link in the description for anyone who wants to play the game. I have my friend code, referral code there, and you guys can help me out by using that because I get cool items in game as a result of referrals and stuff like that. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I hope that this kind of helps people figure out whether or not they want to actually play the game. I know this review is probably a little bit longer than some of the other reviews I've seen, but I'd rather do a long, in-depth review and analysis of the game than just kind of give like 2 cents here and there. You know, I wanted to have some kind of structure. So yeah, if you have never been to my channel before, my name is SholoQ. I am a streamer and content creator. I stream on Twitch, YouTube, and Kick 3 times a week. You can find me on any of those platforms. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on a few other platforms and stuff like that. So yeah, you can find those links also in the description. And if you'd like to see more reviews like this, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to do reviews on other games. I'm thinking about also doing a review on V Rising because that is an early access game right now. And that game is prepping to be officially released early next year. But yeah, and also I might also do a review on Planet Zoo, which is another game I play a lot of. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, if you like to play games that are like simulation games or, you like survival games, base building, I am probably the one for you. See you next time. Sholo out.